Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for attending our first session in our Create Your Perfect Native Garden summer webinar series on making a pollinator garden. This series is hosted by our Tree of Life program in partnership with Fairfax County's Master Gardeners. Today's session, as I said before, will be recorded and sent out after, so no worries there. And this is only the first out of 3 webinars that we have planned for you. So please share with your friends and family. Our next one will be on low maintenance gardening for those who do not have unlimited time, energy, or money to dedicate to their gardens. I'm raising my own hand there, so I'm really looking forward to that session. And then our third webinar will be on the fascinating science behind black gold, aka composting, and its environmental benefits, including the pros and cons of 7 different methods, so that you can choose the one that best fits you and your congregation's space, lifestyle, and goals. All right. So I'm Andriana Jinjulin, Fax's Communication and Outreach Manager. If you would like to take the next step with your congregation in your creation care or sustainability efforts, please book a time to meet with me using my appointment scheduler on the link on the screen, or send me an email at andriana@faithforclimate.org. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce Elaine Metlin, who is a certified Fairfax Master Gardener. Elaine is also an ambassador in Northern Virginia Bird Alliance's Wildlife Sanctuary Program. So if you request a free site visit assessment of your home, you might be lucky enough to have her expertise one-on-one in your very own garden. All right, that's about enough from me. So I'll be passing it on to you now, Elaine.
Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here and so inspired that about your interest in creating native plants. I think that the title of this series about creating a perfect native garden is very aspirational. If there's one thing that I've learned about gardening over the last 25 years is that we always strive for perfection, but we can rarely maintain it, particularly over the summer months that we have here. But it's always good to try. So I am going to share my screen and start my PowerPoint in a minute. I'm always interested in questions. We do have a lot of material to go through. So one of the things you could do is put your questions in the chat, and then we can address them all at the end. And we'll leave 15 or 20 minutes at the end for questions. And so let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, 1 second here. There we go. Okay. All right, so when Andriana and I talked about this presentation, we thought that it would be nice to focus on particular native plants that I've worked with and that I like. And so we will be doing that. But first, I thought I'd give all of you some background information about what kind of steps you need to do to create a native garden in the first place. So this slide talks about the definition of a native plant. I believe that you all are familiar enough with native plants that, but just to touch on the high points, it's a plant that grew naturally in North America and wasn't brought over by any colonialists from other countries or continents. it's to drill down. It's a plant that is found in our climate and soil type, a plant that supports a complex ecosystem of insects, birds, mammals, and other wildlife. And as I said, it's not an introduced plant. So anytime you see the Latin name of a plant that has japonica or chinensis after it, you're going to know that that came from somebody else, and that it is not an invasive species. So I just wanted to talk for a minute about the philosophy of native plants, because if any of you belong to the Facebook group about the Virginia Native Plant Society, so people have various degrees of passion and opinion about native plants. And some people are feel that it's not a native plant, for example, unless it's native to Fairfax County, or Virginia, or the ecosystem that Fairfax County is a part of, or North America. And so I think what you have to think about is whether you're going to have that kind of very narrow focus, which is fine. It will limit your the plants that you grow, or whether you expand it a bit to include, the Commonwealth of Virginia. Also, there's quite a lot of discussion and ongoing research about plants that are not the pure species, but whether they're nativars or cultivars. And I just wanted to address that really quickly before I moved on. There's a great garden up in, I think it's Delaware, called Mount Cuba, that does a lot of research on native plants versus the straight species versus the cultivars. And some of the cultivars actually outperform the straight species in terms of attracting pollinators. This research is ongoing and can't really be generalized. It's being done plant by plant. But the one thing that I think I have seen generalized about is, if you are gonna plant a cultivar or a nativar, the research has generally shown that if you plant a dwarf species that is otherwise identical in terms of leaf shape and color and flower structure, that will attract the same pollinators as the straight species. Once you start messing around with leaf color, making the flowers double, sterilizing them, doing things that the pollinators don't recognize, then you may run into trouble in terms if what your goal is to have a pollinator garden. I wanted to talk briefly about the research that's been done by Doug Tallamy and also Jared Fowler that show that the 14% of native plants, what they call the keystone plants, support 90% of butterfly and moth Lepidoptera species. And as far as bees are concerned, 15 to 60% of North American native bee species are pollen specialists, with pollen from 40% of native plants. So these keystone species are really, really important if you're planting for the ecosystem. We live in a region that's been denominated as Ecoregion 8, Eastern Temperate Forests. And there is a link here in the slides that will take you to the National Wildlife Federation's discussion about the keystone plants for our ecosystem, our ecoregion. The top keystone plant in our ecoregion for butterfly and moth caterpillars is the oak. It supports 436 different species. And in terms of bees, the top native host plant is the helianthus, the sunflower, and the native sunflower, and that supports 50 different kinds of 50 specialist bees. So how do you get started with natives? The next slide, which you're going to be getting a copy of for those of you who came in later, all of the links on these slides you'll be able to access when Andriana sends you a copy. So these are some of the best websites in terms of getting information about native plants. And a lot of the information that's in this presentation came from these websites. So how do you decide what native plant to use? Well, it's pretty much the same analysis that you go through when you're planting any garden. You want to know what your site conditions are, your soil type, your moisture level, whether it's sunny or shady, and what the pH requirement of the plant is. For those of you who are starting from scratch or haven't done this for a while, I'm going to put in the pitch that I always put in from the Master Gardeners. This is Fairfax County Master Gardeners, but it's not limited to Fairfax County. You should test your soil. Get a soil test kit. In Fairfax County, you can get them at the farmers markets, at the libraries, at the government center. And there's a program that you can get soil samples and send them away to the diagnostic, to the lab, and they'll send you back an analysis of your soil. If you're not sure about your soil or you haven't done it for a while, it's a really good thing to do. So, how do you design with natives? The layering aspect, which really mirrors nature, is something that you want to mimic. So you'll have canopy trees, understory trees, a shrub layer, and a ground layer. That provides shelter and food for the insects and the birds. And it also happens to look very nice to plant that way. You know that I'm sure that in our area we have overpopulation of deer, and so the deer tend to eat away at that ground layer and the shrub layer, and can really decimate young trees, young shrubs, and so there are plants that are deer resistant. There are no plants that are deer proof, but those are layers that you're going to want to pay attention to once you've gotten your canopy trees and your understory trees planted. And the canopy trees are the big hardwoods that that have been growing for a long time, the oaks and the tulip poplars and the wild cherries and trees like that. The understory trees are shorter and they really grow 20 to 30 feet tall usually. Under the canopy trees like dogwoods, redbuds, service berries, those are all understory trees. And then, the native shrubs and then the ground layers, and then filling in with native perennials and grasses as a mulch. And also, for the flowers, for the pollinators. So I have two links at the bottom of this slide. One is how to design a native plant garden in more detail. The other that I wanted to talk about for a minute, because I don't hear much discussion about it, is a link to an article in Fairfax Gardening, which is the publication that the Fairfax County Master Gardeners put out, and it's called "When Native Plants Go Bad," and it almost seems like heresy to talk about both of those things in the same sentence. But what the article is touching on, and what I want to just touch on briefly now, and then a little bit more later when we go through the plants, is we're instructed that native plants are never invasive because they're from here, but that they can be aggressive. And some of them can be very aggressive. And if you're, working with unlimited space, then maybe you really want a plant that's going to fill up a lot of space and grow quickly. But if you're working with limited space and you have parameters and you want a lot of different natives, then it's kind of important to know when you plant a native plant, whether it's going to take over. So I will just give you an example of one of those right now, and that's common milkweed. I love common milkweed. It's a beautiful plant. We'll talk about it in depth later. But it spreads by runners, and if it's happy, it can pop up everywhere. It can go under walls. It can, it really can spread, and you have to be prepared to be, if you don't have unlimited space, to be ruthless about growing milkweed, which sometimes means, pulling it up or digging it out from the places where you don't want it to be. So I'm just saying, I know the next discussion that you're having is on low maintenance gardens. If you plant a native plant that is going to require you for years afterwards to be removing it, that to me is not the definition of low maintenance. So I think it's important to really inquire into the characteristics of that native plant and how quickly it spreads when you're planting your garden. So, let's see. So, in order to create a native space, what are the things that we want to do in order to create that space? Well, if you have a lawn, you might consider reducing it, removing invasive plants, trying to avoid avoiding using insecticides. And I want to talk about that for 1 second with respect to the Northern Virginia Bird Alliance. When people ask for their property to be certified as a wildlife sanctuary under the Northern Virginia Bird Alliance guidelines, there are 2 instances where we will not certify. One is if you have if you have a cat who lives in your home who you let go outside, and two is if you use one of those mosquito those mosquito sprayer companies. They're very good at marketing and making it sound like all they kill is the mosquitoes. And the organic ones try to make it sound like they're, better, but they kill everything. And an organic insecticide might be better for you, but it's going to kill the caterpillars regardless. So just a word of warning about that. Practice benign neglect, protect the natural. If you already have areas on your property that are growing wild, go take a look at them or leave them alone if you can. If you have tree stumps or snags, which are dead tree trunks, and they're not endangering anybody, you can leave those. If you have brush piles, those can be incredibly beneficial for the wildlife. So resist the temptation to make everything look perfect. Perfectly manicured, perfectly beautiful. Most native gardens really don't look like that. And then last of all, plant native plants. So if you're starting the next few pages, let me see, next 3 pages go into a lot of detail about planting a native garden. And I'm not going to sit here and read everything from these slides. Let's talk for a minute about starting your native garden. Are you starting from scratch? Do you have an area of lawn that you want to get rid of? Okay, so how are you going to do that? Are you gonna, how big is the area? Are you gonna smother it? Are you going to try to dig it up? Or are you going to, and please don't yell at me when I say this, are you going to use Roundup? I mean, I have seen many native plant sites that say that depending on the space that you want to plant, that using Roundup once to eradicate the existing vegetation is permissible. If that is, there's a lot of science and research about Roundup. It can be a controversial topic. I will say that the master gardeners, and we have a handbook from Virginia Tech where we are told what we can advise our clients about herbicides and pesticides to use, and Roundup is on the approved list. But of course, everybody has to make their own decision about that. The point is that if you already have a garden and you don't have to eradicate a whole lot of things, you'll be hopefully adding natives to what you already have and taking some other things out. But if you're starting from scratch, especially if it's a big area, you're going to have to get rid of the existing vegetation, if it's turf grass or weeds or whatever. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is what are you going to do after that? So you have to decide what you're going to use to plant your garden. And again, depending on the size and the space that you've chosen, you have really 3 choices. You have seeds, you have plugs, and you have plants. Seeds are the cheapest. If you're going to get a really true native plant mix of seeds, and you're not just going on to some of these websites and buying what they call their wildflower meadows or something, which have a lot of things in them that are not native plants. Those seeds aren't going to be cheap, but they are far less expensive than plugs, and which are small plants that you can get from some nurseries, especially if you have access to any kind of commercial nursery. There's a much broader selection if you can buy through a commercial account. I don't know if that's possible with this organization, if people could, band together under the auspices of the organization and buy together. But plugs are a really good way to go because they are not as expensive, and yet they are plants with a root system. Or you can buy regular plants. And later on in this presentation, I think at the end, I talk about a lot of places where you can buy native plants around here, online. But be advised that particularly if you're buying shrubs and trees, they're not necessarily inexpensive. There's a couple of programs where you can get some free trees. Fairfax County has one called the Relief Program that if you go on their website early in the spring, you can get a number of native saplings, and I'm talking sticks with roots, but still you can get a pretty nice selection from there. And also the Northern Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District has a sale every spring, quite reasonably, where they'll sell you bundles of native trees and shrubs. But if you're gonna go and try to, buy a tree that's a couple of years old, that's more well established, I'm sure you know that the nursery prices are they're not cheap. So be patient. Plan your garden, and don't necessarily think that you're going to get it, everything in it that you want to have planted all at once.
Oh, Elaine, sorry, I just wanted to make a little note that for time, is it possible if you could go to
Speed
like
up.
the
Speed up.
part? Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
don't mean to rush
Sorry,
you.
all right, so I'm going to move on. I think I've covered a lot of these slides. So now we're going to get to the part where we talk about actual plants. And these are the native plant recommendations for where we live for spring, summer, and fall blooming. Remember, you want a succession of blooms. You want everything from early spring to late fall. The pollinators need all 3+ seasons. So I'm going to be talking about a number of these plants. I have most of them in my garden. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the link that Adriana sent you with the video of my garden, but you can see what they look like in a garden after this talk if you haven't had a chance to look at it already. So here's a very simple planting guide that shows 9 different species that will cover the entire season from spring to summer to fall. And it's a simple layout for a native garden. The ones that have pink around them are spring. The green ones are summer, and the orange ones are fall. Okay, so the first plant I wanted to talk about was wild columbine. This is one of my favorite plants just because it's so delicate and beautiful. It is not, it is what they call a short-lived perennial. It, it doesn't tend to live a really long time, although if it's in a great place, it will, but it will self-seed readily if it has good, if it's planted somewhere where it's happy. So there's the native wild columbine it can get pretty tall, up to 3 feet. There are dwarf species as well. And it likes shade. It does not like soil that's too wet. It also has a long taproot, which makes it difficult to transplant in my experience. So it likes moist soil, but it should be well drained. It likes part shade. I don't think personally that it likes deep shade. It can tolerate a little sun, and you can see that it attracts a variety of wildlife, hummingbirds, bees, butterflies, hawk moths. The seeds are consumed by birds. The flowers are beautiful, and it is one of the early spring bloomers. It's not aggressive. You can find it in a lot of places, and it's a beautiful plant.
Really quick question that I thought was relevant. Lori's asking, is the purple columbine native? Do you know?
It is not.
It's not.
It
Okay.
is not. This is the only native one there. I have seen a yellow one that may also be native, but all those beautiful columbines, all those hybrids, they're not native. And I will tell you, and I love them, but they're not native. They're not invasive, although the purple one will tend to spread. Columbines readily hybridize with the non-native species. So if you want to keep the wild columbine wild, you need to keep it away from the non-native species. Okay, the next plant I wanted to talk about is Pachyra aurea. And this plant does tend to spread. It's a great ground cover. It has round leaves, and they stay green for a long time. In the early spring, it gets these beautiful yellow flowers on it, and they look like daisies. They're very striking, and it attracts as you can see, it attracts sweat bees, cuckoo bees, carpenter bees, fireflies, and lots of butterflies and moths. It also, the deer are not attracted to it. It will spread. It likes moist meadows, boggy swales, low woods. It likes moist soil, and it tends to prefer shade. You can divide it. And it says here that the seeds require stratification. I don't know if you all know what stratification is, but stratification is a cold period that seeds need in order to sprout. So if you're getting seeds that of native plant seeds, make sure and check the package to see if they require stratification. A lot of them require up to 8 weeks of stratification. So if you think you're going to plant your native plant in April, when you want it to be blooming, in May, that isn't going to happen. So stratification is something that you always need to check for. Now, many seeds, especially, there's many seeds, they call them cool annual seeds or native seeds. You can do a winter sowing, direct sowing. And by that, I'm not talking about planting them outside under jugs and things. Of course, you can do that too. But if you don't want to transplant, in our area around January, late December, January, February, you can actually go out and scatter many different kinds of seed, like pull aside your mulch, put them on the soil, cover them back up, and they'll get stratified naturally and start sprouting, in April, and you'll have a lot of plants. You can do that not only with a lot of native plants, but also a lot of cool season annuals, like, well, I don't want to talk about things that aren't native plants. Okay, this is foxglove beard's tongue. This plant, for me, started blooming a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe, and it's a great little plant. It's got like a green shiny flowers, almost a rosette at the base, and then it will send up these white flower stalks, and it will multiply itself around, but it is not aggressive. The hummingbirds and bumblebees really like it because it's got these tubular flowers, and it has a throat. And so there are just lots of specialized bees and hummingbirds and those moths, those hummingbird moths that really need, they're built to stick their proboscis, I think that's how you say it, forgive me if I'm way into a tube. And they prefer that for pollination. So this is that kind of plant. There are lots and lots of, it's also called penstemon. There's lots of cultivars of this. I have not researched whether, and I don't know if research has been done on whether they attract the same amount of pollinators. Most of the ones that I've seen are different color flowers. So I just would bet that, they're not as valuable to the pollinators as the straight species, but I haven't researched that. Okay, next, celandine poppy, not to be confused with a horrible invasive plant called lesser, I think it's celandine, to tell you the truth, celandine. They both have yellow flowers. They both like the woods, but one of them is horribly invasive, and really the only way, it's spreading everywhere along our stream beds, and the only way you can really get rid of it is Roundup. This is also called wood poppy, and it likes to grow in the forest. If you're lucky, it will self-seed. It likes shade. It likes a humusy soil. I've seen it growing around the base of dead trees. It doesn't like dry conditions. Its flowers are showy. They attract ants, bees, and beetles. And it's generally, but not always, resistant to deer. Here's a not great picture, but you can get the sense of what it looks like when you have a really established bed of these celandine poppies. You'll note that these seeds do require stratification. I just think it's a beautiful plant. So also a spring bloomer. So I wanted to talk about 3 different kinds of milkweed because milkweed can be such an important plant for the pollinators. You can see that it supports more than 40 insects and other invertebrates. And of course, the monarch butterfly, which we hear about all the time, it is a host plant. That means that the monarch lays its eggs on the leaf and the caterpillars eat the leaves. It is not necessarily a nectar plant for the monarch butterflies. It's a nectar plant for lots and lots of other species. Just monarchs, when they're migrating, will drink the nectar of a lot of different plants, especially in the fall. So asters, for example, are a really important source of nectar for monarchs when they're making their journey south. Okay, but all right, here we go. The adult monarch butterflies also feed on the nectar of milkweed flowers. I've seen, tons of different pollinators on my milkweed. This is talking about, here's the first type of milkweed I wanted to talk about, the common milkweed. This milkweed needs sun and moist feet. Okay, it does not like dry soil and it does not like shade. So you can't always find those conditions simultaneously, but if you have an edge of your property that is like that, like a ditch or something, it's really suggested that you have at least a group of 9 milkweed plants, so for the butterflies to see them. If you just have one here and one there, the research has shown that it's much harder for them to spot it from the air. So you want a cluster of them. And as I said earlier, if you have a border of your property with those conditions and you can just let the milkweed go and not worry about it taking over like interior garden space, that's kind of the best of all possible worlds. This is what they call butterfly weed. Sometimes now they call it butterfly milkweed so that people don't think it's a weed. Asclepias tuberosa. So this is a much better behaved plant. Mine is blooming now. It doesn't get very tall and it doesn't spread very much either. It's the seeds are not hard to, it's not hard to grow it from seed. So, it attracts the same varieties of pollinators as common milkweed. All of these 3 do. There's 12 different varieties of native milkweed, I believe. I'm only talking about 3. Swamp milkweed. This is my favorite. It's so beautiful. It's well behaved. It doesn't get that tall. It's not as vigorous, is the truth. But, it will grow in the shade and it will grow in wet soil, as you might guess from the name. The leaves are narrower and darker green, and the flowers are just gorgeous and they last a long time. So, and it just does not spread the way common milkweed does. I haven't noticed that it spreads with runners, but if it does, it hasn't so far in my garden.
Oh, and Elaine, would you and if you're gonna cover these at the end, that's okay too. But we have a question that's like, where can you find these very specific species of milkweed, like butterfly weed or anything like that? Like, or do you recommend Earth Sangha? Is that
Yes, yes, Earth Sangha, native plant sales, um, the Air Hill in Vienna. They have a native plant sale every May. They sell swamp milkweed and common milkweed. They're not hard to find. Earth Sangha is a fabulous resource. And I have a whole list of resources for where to buy the native plants at the end. Next plant, I don't know how I'm doing on time, Adrian.
we've got a rush because we have a lot of
I'm
good
through.
questions.
Okay, this is Monarda, wild bergamot. It's more of a summer bloomer. You can see the close up of the pictures over here. Well, I don't know if you can see my pointer or not, but the bees love this flower. It will spread pretty vigorously, and it's a vigorous plant. It is susceptible to powdery mildew, but it attracts a whole lot of hummingbirds, butterflies, bees, and it's the larval host for 2 moths. It likes sun and partial shade. It's not too picky as far as the moisture of the soil. I've grown it in drier soil and moister soil. You can pick off the seed heads. Sometimes you'll get a second bloom, and it's a good summer pollinator plant. Okay, this is Joe Pyeweed. Joe Pyeweed is also kind of a late-ish summer plant. You can see it has this fuzzy kind of seed heads on it. It attracts lots and lots of pollinators. It gets tall and it will volunteer. So it doesn't so much spread as you'll find it coming up, like on runners, but you'll find it coming up in patches in other parts of your garden. And those seed heads, when they're full, they're just covered with pollinators. It's a great plant. Okay, this is the white wood aster. This is more of a late summer, early fall bloomer. It's got, when it isn't blooming, it's got a nice sort of heart-shaped green leaf that's quite attractive as a ground cover. And then in the late fall, early summer, you'll get these white flowers on it. It's important because it will bloom into October. It will spread, but it's not a thug. And it tolerates lots of different conditions. So it will grow in shade and part shade, but it'll take a little sun, likes it wetter. And again, it's a really important plant for the fall garden, for the pollinators. White turtlehead. this this is the only host plant for this Baltimore checker spot butterfly. It in my garden, it has planted itself around in lots of different places, but I don't mind. It will get tallish. I Chelsea chop it a lot of the time, so it doesn't get too tall. I don't know if you know that expression, Chelsea chop, but it's from the Chelsea Garden Club, and it's basically cutting your perennials back by about a third early in the season, and they will bloom a little later, but they'll be bushier and not as tall. You can treat a lot of perennials like that. This is, anyhow, this is what the flowers look like. They look like turtle heads. And again, they bloom latish, and it will tolerate wet soil. The biggest problem I have is it gets powdery mildew on it. So, but the deer leave it alone, and I just cut the mildewed part off, and it comes right back. So. Lobelia. The Lobelia cardinalis and the Lobelia syphilitica, both gorgeous plants. The cardinal flower in particular, the red one, is beloved by hummingbirds. It grows midsummer through the fall. It's got those tubular red flowers. Those are magnets for hummingbirds. It'll grow in wet and moist soil. If it's really hot like it is here, it likes partial shade. It will spread itself around, and it's something that I just don't mind at all. I mean, it's worked its way from my backyard up into my front yard, but it never feels uninvited to me. I'll take as much of it as I can get. It's just a beautiful plant. And the great blue lobelia is also beautiful. I think it's it self-seeds a little more readily than the Lobelia cardinalis. Tolerates heavy shade and wet soil, and attracts a lot of pollinators. So these two bloom close to the same time, and they just look stunning together. All right, I'm going to talk about three shrubs that I have in my garden. They say that Itea virginica, or Virginia sweetspire, is a very underused plant. It blooms in the spring. It gets these long white strands of flowers. They're a little fragrant, attracts a lot of pollinators. And then in the fall, it turns red. So it will tolerate clay soil, wet soil. It will tolerate shade. It's great for a woodland garden or in a rain garden. And it's a beautiful plant. It just finished blooming in my garden. Winterberry. This is also a native plant. This picture it's a picture of the berries after all the leaves have dropped off. If you're lucky, or maybe you're not lucky, you'll get this spectacular showing, when it's snowing. It's amazing. But more often than not, the robins and the cedar waxwings and other birds will eat all these berries very quickly. You need a male and a female plant to get The flowering, the flowers are white, they're tiny. And I think that in my garden, they just finished flowering. So if you're going to buy it from a nursery, you want to go to someplace reputable and make sure they can sell you a male plant and a female plant, which is not always easy for me to, I can't tell them apart. I need somebody to tell me the difference. So it says one male for up to 10 females within 40 feet of each other, but otherwise you're not going to get the flowers or the berries. And let's see. Okay, this, whoops, wrong way. Okay, clethra, also called summer sweet. It has a lovely fragrance. Gets these spikes of white flowers on it in the summer. There are pink cultivars, but I have the straight species. And it's whenever a plant has the name sweet in its name, it makes you think that its flowers are fragrant, and this one certainly is. And it will tolerate clay, it will tolerate dense shade. It attracts native bees, hummingbirds, butterflies, and you can see what it prefers in terms of growth. I can tell you that my garden was planted in 2008, so we're talking 17 years now, and the winterberry, the itea, and the clethra that we planted in 2008 are still going strong. I've never had to replace them. They will sucker, especially the itea and the winterberry to some degree. I have all three of them, but not in an annoying way. It's like you're happy to have more of these bushes. So all right. So the last,
Elaine, sorry, real quick. I
yeah.
just want to say, so this part I think is like so important. We're actually going to continue going over time as well. So if Elaine, I think we talked about before that, that's okay
Yes.
with you, right? So that if you ask questions or anything, like you will get your questions answered, and if you can stay on, great. If you have to go, because it's three, completely understand. We will send the recording out too. So either way, you will get all of this great information.
Thanks, Andriana. I'm sorry about going over, but
Oh
I'm
no,
very
perfectly fine.
overly enthusiastic about these topics. Okay, so these 2 pages talk about where you can buy natives. If you go on the Virginia Native Plant Society page, it will also list a lot of places where you can buy natives. There's lots of farmers markets that sell natives, and really, I've just scratched the surface here. So if you Google, where can I get native plants near me, but for in terms of an enormous variety and an extremely trustworthy organization, and an organization that does a lot of good in the world. Earth Sangha is really, I'm putting in a plug for them. Okay. Also, I will just say that there are nurseries that still sell invasives here. I think Virginia just passed a law that starting next year, they're going to have to mark them or stop selling them or something. So they're trying to take steps about that. But not every native plant that you get turns out to be a native. Sometimes people are genuinely confused about it. Sometimes you'll get cultivars or nativars, like all of those echinaceas that, the coneflowers that have been hybridized, and They'll call them native plants, but if you want something that's the straight species, you may have to probe a little harder for that. Green Springs Garden also has, their summer, their spring sale where they have lots and lots of vendors come, including native plant vendors. And here's a couple more links to places where you can find out about native plants. And this last but not least, this is a picture that I took in my garden. This plant is called Silphium, and it's a sunflower-like plant that grows very tall and blooms late in the season. And you can see these seed heads. The birds love them, and the leaves cup the plant and have water at their base, so you get a lot of insects and birds drinking out of them. But I'm gonna just tell you, it is a thug. So this is one that if you plant it somewhere where you don't mind it spreading. Plant it with the milkweed and let them enjoy each other's company. Okay, I think that that's it for my screen sharing.
We can go straight into questions first. That was so fascinating. I love that you actually say straight up what the deer don't like. I feel like I've attended a few of these kinds of like talks, and that's not mentioned a lot of times. So I really appreciated that. All right, I actually at one point lost my chat access, so I'm gonna go off memory here. There was someone who asked a question about mulch I thought was very interesting. Elaine, are you able to see the chat? Was that
I can see the chat.
yeah, someone asked about mulch?
Somebody asked about, let's see, there's a lot of questions here.
Yeah.
What avoiding shredded hardwood mulch? I um I I use mulch. I use shredded hardwood mulch in my garden. Not a lot. Um, no more than an inch, really. There was a time in my garden when I mulched with straight compost. Um, um, I do I can tell you about a terrible experience I once had with something called toxic mulch that had been in a pile and it built up gases in it. And when the guy who helped me with my garden spread it on my plants, it killed a lot of them, which was a horrifying experience. But I don't think you're going to run into that with the stuff in the bags. But I mean, mulch, mulch, if you obviously, if you have good ground cover and plentiful ground cover, that's considered a green mulch. You don't necessarily have to mulch if you have enough ground cover. But the truth is that if you have a bare spot in your garden, something is going to grow there. And it's going to often, more than not, be a weed. But sometimes it's something you want there. I don't know. A mulch gives you a little bit more control over not having, a zillion things pop up in your garden that you might not want. So I don't have anything against shred. I don't like the big pieces of bark. I like a mulch that is going to break down. And the only other thing I have to say about mulch is sometimes it gets this fungus in it called dog vomit fungus. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's gross. It looks like what it sounds. It looks like its a name, but it won't hurt anything, and it goes away after a couple days. So that's my my knowledge about mulch. All right.
There
Well,
was a
yeah, go
question
ahead.
about weed killer or pest. There was something about I think it was Lori's question. Um, but there was something asked about pesticide or like what to use.
Okay. All right. I'm really putting on my master gardener hat here. People think, oh, okay. First of all, I advise against homemade herbicides. Just because it's vinegar or salt doesn't mean it's not going to hurt the soil. People kind of think if they use it in their kitchen that it's okay, but you are so much better off. I mean, unless you really do your research, like a reputable insecticidal soap is going to have what it needs from an organic producer is going to have what you need in it in the right concentration, and you might be able to make your own. I mean, but don't vinegar kills the leaves. It doesn't kill the roots. Salt is terribly damaging to the soil. I mean, just think about when they spread salt in the wintertime to, for the ice. If that gets in your garden, it's going to kill your plants. So don't use that recipe. Don't use vinegar and salt. The dish soap is people use it as a surfactant to help things stick to the leaves. But, over many, many, many years of time and research, I really recommend going with a reputable product. And you can, there's a website called Garden Myths by a guy named Robert Pavlis, Pavlis. And he has a lot of really good information on things like fertilizers, myths about fertilizers, myths about drainage, myths about herbicides and insecticides. I just do your research and look for science-based. There's another website called The Garden Professors. Look for science-based, research-based information, not like wives' tales. Okay, get off my soapbox now.
Okay, our next question is, and some of these questions I'm gonna hop around. I know David had to hop off, so at the end, maybe we'll give him his own like little tidbit and I'll send it to him. But we have a question from Nancy that says, what is the plant that has a spire of tiny white petaled, like 5 petal flowers, green round center like a little button, large green leaves, grows very tall, can be a shrub, quickly moves from flowering to green berries, then purple, spreads and gets tall. Does it have any benefits? Do you happen to know?
Are you talking about pokeweed?
Oh,
Yeah,
it does sound like pokeweed. It
purple berries, tall, big green leaves, pokeweed. Well, it's beneficial to the pollinators and the birds. It's the berries are poisonous to humans. I don't know about pets. It gets really big and it spreads a lot, so you want it kind of in your woods or someplace where it's not going to take over your garden. Um, Supposedly you can make a salad. There's something called poke salad out of the really young green leaves, but I believe you have to boil them first. So I'm not, well, see, pokeweed, my backyard poison. I mean, it's like, it's a little, I don't know that I'd eat the leaves, although the farmers and the pioneers did after they boiled the leaves. So, but don't eat the berries. They really are poison. So, if that's, but the birds love them. They also spread them everywhere. Yeah. So, you know, if you, it will come up in many places if you have an enthusiastic bird population for your pokeweed.
And it does seem like, just looking at these pictures I'm sharing, it does seem like it's pokeweed. It matches the flower description too. So, but yeah, wow, that was quite the expertise right there. You're able to identify it just from that description. I could never. And I know what pokeweed is. Okay, that was great. Love seeing an expert at work. Uh, and then I definitely want to give a chance. Is there anyone that has like questions here before, like, and Lori, if I missed any of your questions, if I missed anyone's question in the chat, please let me know. But if does anyone have any questions that you'd like to ask right now? Okay, if not, raise your hand if you want to. Oh, we do. Okay, any use for wild violets?
Oh, wild violets are great. Um, uh, they're, you know, they're native. The flowers attract a lot of pollinators in the spring. Some people use them as a ground cover, uh, let them grow through their lawns. You know, it all depends on what your tolerance is. I mean, if you want a perfect lawn, then that's your business. But some people let violets and clover and, you know, other native plants grow in their lawn. You can eat the flowers, they're edible. Um, and, you know, they can take over, I mean, is the thing. And so I find myself pulling them out of my garden beds when they're crowding out other things that I'm trying to grow. But if you have a bare spot and you want a nice native ground cover, I would keep it until you know, until and unless you have something else you'd rather plant there.
Great. Now we have a question from Terry. Can you Chelsea chop all plants?
Uh, Not annuals, but most perennials. Like if they have like a straight stalk up the middle, I I mean I cut back. I mean I have ironweed. That's another native that grows in the fall, that blooms in the fall, gets tall, really tall, and spreads itself around. I Chelsea chop the heck out of that. Um, my turtle head, phlox. I don't know if you grow tall phlox. Well, my dear Chelsea chopped my phlox for me. They nibble on it, but I would look it up because I don't want to say across the board. But you know, if you have something like a daylily, which is not a native, or an ornamental lily, I don't, you know, they're only flowers um, on a stem or something, or at the top of the plant, then I don't think you can Chelsea chop those. You cut off the tops of if you grow lilies, if you cut off the tops of them, you won't have any. So I think you have to look it up plant by plant.
We got a few questions about related to what you just talked about, one more specific. How much can you cut off a red stem dogwood without ruining it? Mine are growing a bit big for the location.
You mean a red twig dogwood? Um, you can you can prune those back pretty hard. In fact, it's encouraged that you prune them back because the really deep red color of the stems is on the new growth. So you can, as it gets more woody, you tend to lose that color. So you can prune them back a lot. Now, as to when, I would have to double check, but I can also tell you this. If you cut off red twig dogwood, the ends of them, like 2 feet, 18 inches, and you have a stream bed or something like that, and you want to prevent erosion, you can take those bare sticks in the early spring, stick them right into the soil, and more often than not, they will grow roots and grow a new plant. So that's a great thing to do with your red twig dogwood cuttings. If you have a place where you want more plants.
Great. And then aren't you supposed to cut back your plants before the 4th of July if you want it to bloom?
You mean in terms of Chelsea chopping? I don't know when the Chelsea Garden Show is, but I think it's before the 4th of, I think it's May. Yeah, I think that if you wait too long, you're probably not gonna get, I do it earlier in the season, yeah.
Great. And then another question about like what can you use Virginia creeper for? I believe
Oh,
Nancy, did I get your question right, Nancy? Are you asking about the use for Virginia creeper? Yep. Okay.
well, Virginia creeper is one of those plants that you hate, and it's a love-hate relationship. I mean, it's a beautiful, it's a native plant. It attracts pollinators. It turns red in the fall if you let it grow up a tree. It doesn't strangle like ivy does, but it'll go it's a very vigorous vine. It'll go everywhere. So a lot of times you have to be, pulling it out if you don't want it to take over. And there are a not insignificant number of people who are allergic to it, just like poison ivy, believe it or not. So you have to be careful and make sure you're not one of them. When it's really young, the sprouts, often have like 3 leaves on them. They look a lot like poison ivy. But as they grow bigger, you get that 5-leafed pattern. And so then you have Virginia creeper. Poison ivy does not have 5 leaves. But in the beginning, sometimes Virginia creeper only has 3. So sometimes it's a little confusing. So if it's off in the woods and you want to let it grow up a tree or a fence and you really enjoy it, or there's an area like a stream bank that you want to kind of let it go for erosion or something, but you probably don't want it in the middle of your native garden or you're going to be fighting it.
Right. And I think one of the first questions that was asked by David, he was wondering, how can you tell if like a plant is like truly native? Like, how would you know? Is there a way to like know? Is there like a surefire
Oh,
resource?
yeah. Yes. There's a native atlas of Virginia flora and fauna. I don't know if that is the right name, but if you go on the Virginia Native Plant Society website, they talk about that atlas. And there's a couple of different places that supposedly have the definitive word on whether it's actually native to your area. And that atlas is one. And then there's also, I think it's a USDA publication.
Wait, sorry, Elaine. Is the atlas called the Digital Atlas of
Yes,
Virginia Flora Fund? Flora,
yes.
okay.
And you
Think
can
I
think you
I'll put
can
them to the chat.
download it. I think you can download it. That's really like the quote Bible, unquote, with a small b. But people really look to that.
Fun. I'll also put
If
in.
you're at a farmer's market, or a nursery, and you want to, I mean, I don't know. The Virginia Native Plant Society has a Facebook page. I find myself on that page a lot because people are always posting pictures and asking for IDs. And there's a lot of very knowledgeable people on it. And so you can learn a lot about plants just from reading that Facebook page. So today somebody posted a picture of something called Virginia knotweed, Persicaria virginiana. And there's a native version and there's an invasive version. Someone bought a version at a native plant sale that they're concerned isn't really native. And I think that it wasn't. It's not, I mean, it's either out of, but you know, that particular plant, back in the day, we were told it was native, and then later they came to realize it was not native. So, you know, absolutely no. If it's a plant you're not familiar with, I guess the best thing to do is buy from a really reputable source. And if it somehow turns out to be not native and you don't want it, just get rid of it.
Right. And I'm just, while you were talking, I'm just putting in some of the resources you were mentioning. I'm trying to go as fast as I can. But this, like, you're right, Plant Nova Natives offers some really fantastic resources, including like where can you get native plants? They have this huge list listing like the 3 local like native plant nurseries, but then all of these are the like things that don't happen as frequently, right? Like these plant sales listed by date
Right.
and time, and here, like, this is just fantastic.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a great, Plant Nova Natives is a great resource. It really is. The Master Gardeners of Virginia, of Northern Virginia, which is the Arlington Master Gardeners, I believe. They're a good resource. A lot of the cards that I had next to the pictures of the plants came from their website. The Fairfax County and Virginia Tech, which is, you know, the Master Gardeners are all extensions of Virginia Tech, which is the land grant university, one of the 2 land grant universities in Virginia. And Virginia Tech, if you go on the Virginia Tech extension website, I think I put their link on the next to the last page, and you type in native plant, you'll get a ton of fact sheets about native plants. So there's, you know, and then I connected to the Homegrown National Park. Now that's about native plants in general. This is Doug Talames, who's like the godfather of the native plant movement, and his push for all of us to plant more native plants so that, you know, over time, our yards will all form like a national, homegrown national park, and the pollinators will have so many more options to choose from. So there's a lot out there, a lot of really good information out there.
Okay, I mean, I wish we had unlimited time. So, but at this point, I'm gonna like pick if there are extra questions that like we don't get to. I'll see. Elaine, are you okay if I also like send them to you and maybe you'll be able to?
I'm happy
Okay,
to
great.
answer questions.
Yeah, and okay, I'll say. I'm gonna pick.
Now, I'm a recovered lawyer, so I love to give advice and answer questions. It's in my DNA.
Yeah, and you're very good at it. Like, I'll just say, like, just
Thank
I'm
you.
amazed. Oh wait, so we have a Beth US. Can you post the link for info sheets on native plants? It was mentioned just now. Oh, so the links that you put in the chat, everything will be sent after. This is going to be a really beefy follow-up email. So just know, like, all the links in the chat, everything, it will be sent after. So no problem with that. We also have Lori. I wanted to, like, Lori, you're still there, right? Yeah, Lori's there. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking when you were talking about the expert in garden mix. Are you able to talk and like ask the question? I mean,
Oh yeah. She said like the not the weed killer. she said look, research it, garden mix, and then she gave a name, but I didn't have my pencil out.
Oh, garden myths. Robert Pavlis, Pavlis.
Okay.
I found. I also share this my screen.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, garden myths, not myths.
Myths, that's it. And then also the garden
Oh,
professors.
myth.
Yeah,
Okay.
myths. It's hard to hear,
Sorry.
right? No, it's okay. And the garden professors, I also recommend them highly.
Okay, with garden professors. Oh my God, Elaine, you're giving me a hard time.
I'm sorry. You're getting a whole download of my knowledge.
Is
So
it this? Yeah, this
the
is
garden professors, good, yeah.
is this under garden myths? Is this the one? Like this is like garden products you should not buy. Is this what you were
That's one
talking
of
about?
them. I mean,
Okay.
I find him very enlightening. You read what he says about fertilizers. He's just very science-based and common sense. And the garden professors are the same.
Great.
Garden,
And these are the garden professors.
yeah. It's a really
Interesting.
nice website.
Okay. I think this is their blog or something. So, okay, this is great. Let me go ahead and put that in the chat too. I'm trying to keep up. Okay. Here's some shooting real quick. And then, okay, I think I got everything. We'll cover Nancy. I like how you're smiling. So we'll cover, you'll be our last question for now, which will be about, now it's about Winter Creeper, if that's okay as a group cover and things like that.
Are you asking me, is Winter Creeper okay? No. Bad plant. It'll go up, it'll make its way to your trees and grow up your trees. I mean, I have it. I wish I didn't, but I mean, it will get vines on your tree that are like this. I mean, thicker than poison. And it'll strangle the trees. And it's just invasive and bad, and I have one good thing to say about it. I shouldn't say anything good about it, but the deer will eat it in the winter, and I think, well, maybe they're not eating something I care about, but it's not a reason to have it. So get rid of it if you can. Yeah, Winter Creeper. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Elaine, I have to say thank you so much. I think everyone here, I don't think I've ever seen a crowd that stayed pretty much the whole time, even when it's gone 30 minutes over. That just shows how passionate everyone here is about this topic. And that's really encouraging, even for just me to see. So also thanks to everyone who registered and attended. Most of you are going to be in the next session too. So that's exciting as well. We'll have, unfortunately, it's not Elaine, but we'll have Master Gardener BJ Frank.
BJ is the head of the Speakers Bureau. She's incredibly knowledgeable. You will learn a lot from her. A lot from her.
Right, like this.
If
this
I
was
could put in, I mean, I don't know. I made the video that
oh yes.
Andriana attached. I just want to put a plug in because it's my garden. It really shows the the native plants growing in the garden. It's not a pure native plant garden. So if that bothers you, don't watch it. But if you want to get a sense of just how beautiful a native plant garden can be, look at the video for a few minutes because I think it's inspiring. Because a lot of people think that native plant gardens are messy and wild and, not beautiful, but they really can be beautiful. So that's the last thing I'll say.